Welcome anyone who's joining us live. You will see the three of us on your screens. You've got myself, the lovely Emma Claire Davis. You've got Holly Tennock from Wilder Work. So this is a collaboration event between Wilder Work, and Reconnect. I'd love for you guys just to introduce yourselves individually. Obviously, you guys know as this being my profile, I'm Bella Hegarty and I'm your host for this. So I will be the question giver and the mediator between what will be a really interesting conversation. So yeah, Emma, tell us a little bit about you and what it is that you do.
Thank you, Bella. So as Bella says, I'm Emma Claire Davis. I'm a transformative coach, or lately I like to call myself a reconnector, as I help people to reconnect to themselves and to their authentic selves so they can be more fully themselves and get out into the world and do exactly what they want to do and experience joy and connection and aliveness and connection to other people and see success in their projects, professional and personal.
Amazing. Holly, what about yourself?
So I'm Holly Tennock, and I am the founder of Wilder Work. So I ran an agency for 12 years and sold it, and I set up an outdoors organisation with a view to bringing coaching into the wild, so that we can help people really form the connections between what's happening internally and what happens in nature.
Amazing. And if anyone has any questions on the concept, anything that happens, or there's anything that you guys would like to ask Emma or Holly, drop them in the chat, both in LinkedIn or if in YouTube, there might be a live feed one there for you as well. And we'll make sure to answer those, and I'll make sure that the ladies are tagged afterwards as well, so that if you've got any questions and you're watching the replay of this, then please drop them in. So we've come up with a kind of, as a concept, a really interesting one, and there's a really interesting collaboration between reconnecting to yourself but also reconnecting to nature, and rewilding as a concept, and how that just rewilding is nature reconnecting to itself to help develop, really. And I'd love to get your guys' perspectives on why this concept and why this collaboration is so interesting for people and what they should know about it.
Well, I think you go, Holly. Yeah.
I suppose so. Just to kick off, I suppose it's the idea that when we try and overthink things and we try and push them to try and get a yield out of them through farming and sort of messing with the fundamental landscape that's actually able to exist and hold balance and create abundance and diversity, when we allow that to come back to itself, it very quickly does, and you can see that through Rewilding, the movie that's recently come out. You can see how quickly that land is able to restore and bring back balance and so much more abundance. So when I recently went on a Reconnect weekend and felt that opportunity to sort of let that push for a yield, let that push for to try and get something out of myself all the time, pull back. And then I felt that sort of surge back to more of a sense of abundance, more of a sense of a natural balance. So the idea of situating Reconnect, which is all about doing that internally, where that is happening externally, so it just provides so many wonderful metaphors and just loosens that process. It just felt like a really magical collaboration.
I love that. I don't know if Emma, you've got anything to add on that.
No, me too. I was going to say, I love that. And we can learn so much from nature, like just going out for a walk and looking at a leaf falling from a tree or something and looking at how effortlessly it falls from the tree. Whereas we're like, no, I can't be falling, I can't be changing, and that sort of thing. So much to be learned. And the context in which you do it at Wilder Work, I think, is incredible. I love what you said as well about diversity. I was just having a conversation with someone this morning, how we're all expected to follow certain paths and to be equal and to be like each other, and there's a normal person and there's a right way of doing business and all this blah blah blah, which just gets us up in our heads, gets us very busy minded, gets us stressed, as you were pointing to, Holly, before. And when we take a step back and we reconnect to ourselves, we can't help but reconnect to everything else as well that's around us, because that's the nature of it. We're not separate beings in isolation.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's really, really interesting how you guys describe both the effect that nature has, because I know that there's so many people that say, I feel my most at self in nature. When I'm outside, everything else just seems less complex. It seems quieter, and I'm able to think when I'm outside, or I'm spending time walking the dogs, or going for a walk, or going for a run. Like, these are people's sanctuaries. And it's funny that what you guys are both describing separately in those individual contexts, they're happening to people all the time. It's just they're not consciously knowing that that's what they're doing. It's just happening on its own.
Yeah, and I think we put it down to, oh, I felt okay because I went out for my walk. So because I was in nature, I felt better. And actually what's happening is being out in nature is almost a stark reminder of who we really are. And it naturally settles us down because we're not thinking about a ton of other things. We're in a more simple way of being, let's say we're more present. And that's when we start to feel better, and we're more aligned with ourselves as well. It's nature with nature. It's not that there's nature and then there's us. We are part of nature. We are the same as nature.
Yeah, definitely. Holly, do you have I probably go for this question for both of you as well. And there's this idea of complexity, and we as humans tend to put a lot of complexity on ourselves to grow our businesses or progress through our career or get to that next step. And that complexity is often what creates so much stress and pressure to be able to kind of move forward. And I don't know if, Holly, what does that complexity do in a nature sense? Like, how does complexity, and I'm sure you can give a lot of examples of how complexity has a negative impact on nature.
That's a really good question. I think nature in and of itself is very complex. You know, you have so many different structural layers all playing upon each other, from like the mycelium network, which feeds and talks to all the different plants. I think the difference is each element is just focusing on itself and just doing what it does, rather than obsessing, I'm a tree, is the mycelium network working okay? You know, like it's just focusing, it is part of this inherently incredibly complex ecosystem. But I would always say, like, each element within that exists because it has evolved to exist in that, and it trusts that it is supported by everything else within it. Now, obviously, when that plant is in an ecosystem where perhaps those things aren't supporting it, you know, as we have over-engineered things or put loads of chemicals on them, those things might not, you know, that there is the complexity of it. It might not thrive, and then that plant will have to evolve. So there's an element of not necessarily just blindly faith growing without checking what isn't there to support us, but so there's that element of you can exist and you focus on what you can do, and then if things aren't there to support you, there's a natural evolution and a leaning into different ways of doing it. So I suppose there's a metaphor you can play with there.
Yeah.
But you can't control or change what isn't there, if that makes sense, which I think as humans we might try to do. So
Yeah.
I think when we look at nature's complexity, we can think, well, what is natural? You know, what can that tree control and what can that tree do? And it actually would probably give us a much more rational, you know, sort of reconnecting approach to existing in a healthy way than we as humans might try to do, because we sort of sense that we can control far more than we actually can. How does that resonate?
I was going to say, Emma, I don't know if you have any concept on that building, like perspective on that building off it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then I think we endlessly search around for solutions outside of ourselves. And that's how we get very, very busy minded. And we look at what everyone else is doing, what other business founders are doing, what other leaders are doing. And I should be doing that. And I should have that routine. And then we tend to get very, very, that's when stress happens and burnout. And yet we've got this simple, and I overuse this word sometimes, so I'll find another word instead of wisdom, intelligence. We have this very simple intelligence inside of us, like the tree, which is there moment to moment to be listened to. And you can liken the tree to our bodies and all those complex processes that are going on all the time that we have absolutely nothing to do with, and we often interfere with through stressing about life and thinking that we can control it. And actually, when we learn to listen to that wisdom, and that can be done in very simple and natural ways, just like the tree. The tree's not constantly thinking, oh, what's going on down there? It just intuitively knows. Then everything works so much more as it's supposed to.
Yeah, so interesting. Us as humans often interfere with nature to help it along its way, when actually, in reality, we're trying to change what's the nature in essence, or if we use the example of the tree, what the tree's already doing to help itself develop, and it already has that intelligence as to it knows what it needs to grow. But we often add in so many extra layers of, like we say, complexity or substances or pesticides to help manipulate the process. And we do that to ourselves as well. We add in routines, tools, systems, medicines, whatever that might be that we think we need in order to be able to develop faster, often causes a hindrance because we are trying to manipulate the situation for something that we can probably already control if we didn't focus on all the externals that are out of our control. There's a word that I know, Emma, you use a lot, and I think this really applies to the nature concept as well, is noise. And we talk about it in Reconnect sense, and I know that there's a lot of noise in nature as well. From a Reconnect standpoint, Emma, like what do you mean by noise when you say noise? And what does that mean to somebody that you would be speaking to?
Yeah, when I'm referring to noise, it's about internal noise. And that can just be, people will understand that in different ways depending on who you are and what moment you're in. It can be felt as overthinking, it can be felt as headaches, it can be felt as stress, it can be felt as worry, anxiety, obsession about something I think I did wrong or whatever. Like, it manifests in different ways in different people, and it manifests in everyone when we get caught up thinking that we are victims of an external world, and that we've desperately got to try and control that world in order to be okay. Yeah. That's what noise is. And as soon as we can experience that, and we all have moments where we experience it, like you were saying before, Bella, when we go out for a walk, we're in nature, we have that tree moment where everything's just kind of working, and we're not thinking about it, and we're not obsessing about ourselves or the moment or the past or the future, and we are just being and doing whatever it is that's on our plate at the time. Then there's, what noise? There's just life.
Yeah. I don't know if, Holly, if you've seen that both with the clients that you work with through Wilder Work, and what the difference is as soon as they step out of that.
Absolutely. I think, when people come to our site, and we've got 3,000 acres, some of it's intensely farmed, some of it is part of a nature reserve, some of it are really small regenerative farms. And the idea is that we move, that we curate safaris through these different landscapes for people, and we coach people to try and step out of their heads and their London mindsets often, where they've come to something from a busy city, where there's lots of like high stimulus, loud noises, and they're feeling sort of like that, to slowly calming down and feeling a bit more centered and grounded. What we try and do is we slowly shed those layers where we're constantly thinking forward and backwards and obsessing, to just being focused on activities that are all about observing. So observing yourself and how you feel, observing what's going on around you in nature, and also what's going on for your colleagues, what's going on for people that you're together with. And that just helps us. And then we really play with all the senses. So we're always asking you to taste different things. We're always asking you to smell different things, feel different things. And so we're starting to ground you into being more present. All of these things that distract us typically from being present and pull us into the past or the future, these we ask people to leave in their bags, turn off. We have a back phone in case someone really needs to get hold of you. All those things we want to sort of strip away, So you can just be really mindfully present in that moment and experience yourself and others how they are when they're being like that.
I love that, Emma. I don't know if there's anything you have to add on from a Reconnect perspective as to what Reconnect does for individuals and business leaders to be able to help them free themselves from that noise.
Yeah, I think it's definitely understanding. A really huge part is understanding how we work, understanding, you know, we, as I sort of mentioned before, we get very up in our heads because we believe that there's something in the external world that can give us peace and that can give us joy. So we're rushing around with the I'll be happy when, or, you know, I need to defend myself from this, that, and the other. There's lots of like monsters out there. And that's innocent. Like, that's not something that we intentionally decide to do. Sometimes we have experiences from a very early age where we don't feel safe, or later on, and there's a lack of, I think generally in human discourse, there's a lack of real understanding of this. There's lots of sources available where we can find it, but really the best way to find it is experiencing it and knowing it for what it is. And that's why I loved the way that Holly was talking about really experiencing through the senses and becoming present. We tend to think that, oh, be present, it's something extra on my to-do list, but it's not. It's the boring part. It's not the real world. I have a moment of being present and I'll get back to the real world. But actually the real world, as we call it, is a load of thinking. It's a load of fantasy. It's a load of imagination. It's a load of like not being here. And all the while life is passing, and little by little the aliveness and the passion and the joy kind of gets turned down. And I see that a lot with the business owners that come to me and say, you know, I was so passionate about this project when I started, and I just feel like I'm just so stressed now, because they're living eternally in trying to control everything, are not accepting that, you know, there will be ups and downs, that things shift, that things change, and having that trust. I loved what Holly said as well about the tree. You know, the tree isn't thinking I'm trusting myself, but the tree the tree just is. When we can trust in that we'll know what to do moment to moment, and that it's not always going to be pleasant. The present moment isn't always, yeah, everything's fine. Like, the present is the present. It's consciousness, it's seeing, it's being aware. Nature is wild and nature is pacific at the same time. And it's being okay with having both of those experiences. That's what makes life interesting.
That's just, it's just listening to it is kind of just settling, isn't it? It's that feeling of, and I can see this, and I know people that, if there's anyone that's anything like me who does tend to class themselves at running 100 million miles an hour, you know when you're getting up in your head, you know when there's that noise or that fast-paced life, because you do find yourself, and I don't know if anyone else can relate to this probably that's watching along, is I find myself doing this and I'm speeding up and speeding up and speeding up and speeding up, and I'm getting faster and faster. So much so that I was actually having a conversation with my mum this morning about it. She said, take a deep breath, just go and sit outside and just stare into and anyone who doesn't already know, I live in Andorra, so sitting in the mountains and just stare into space for a minute and just watch the mountains, and allow yourself to calm down, because whatever you're worrying about, and at that point it was the fact that I couldn't get a doctor's appointment for something until 3 weeks time, and I, you know, no offense to the NHS, but I even here, that's too slow for me, and they're not moving at the pace I would like to. But it's that realization that that's out of my control, and speeding up about it isn't going to make a difference to how fast I can get that doctor's appointment, or how quickly that next sale is going to come in, or how quickly that client might respond, or when a house is going to get built. I mean, often some of these elements we have no control over, just like a plant growing, or being able to watch those tree roots grow into a tree. I mean, trees take thousands of years to grow. Some trees take thousands of years to grow. Yeah. And we do not have control over that process. We can observe that process to feel more connected with it, but we don't have any control over it. I wonder what, for the guys here, from both your guys' perspectives, based off the clients that you've worked with, and I know collaboratively you'll probably see some similar things, is when someone's been able to reconnect or from working through the corporate away days, is what could that feeling look like or feel like or be like, where they feel reconnected, and what's the outcome of that for them? I don't know if Emma, you want to start us off, and then Holly jump in.
Yeah, the first word that comes to mind is freedom. It's a sense of relief and freedom.
Mm.
When someone sees that they don't need to be tied to all their rules and should do's and have to do's and have to be's, and it has to be like it was before, or it has to be like I've planned it for the future, or I need to be this person, I need to be seen as that. When all of that drops away, it's freedom. It's a journey as well, so it makes life becomes perhaps intense in a good way, not sped up intense, but more colorful.
Yeah.
So people start to experience more emotions as well. They start to feel more and have more connection with other people. And then also there's that aliveness that comes through, points people in the direction of what they really want as well. So sometimes there can be changes made in the external world, and sometimes it's simply that people feel much more engaged with what they're already doing. And of course, when you're running a business as well, and you're often in front of clients and prospects, it helps people to be much more connected to the people that they're speaking to. So the conversations become much higher quality than previously, where it's almost like another to do. Oh, I've got to get back to back, another call, and then it's like, actually, I may still be doing back to back. Some people still do that, but I'm fully there.
I don't know, Holly, what do you see from people that have this awareness of how nature kind of develops itself, and the concepts of rewilding? How does that affect businesses often from what you've worked with, and what does that feeling look like?
I mean, it's what's so lovely about it is it's so different for every person. I think about some of the businesses that came to us last year, where you're able to sort of see that longer term impact, where they have sort of struggled with big issues. So we had one organisation that was just really struggling, like was sort of really overhashing, like, how do I get out of this business, 5-10 years, what does that look like, how am I going to do that, like really future focused all the time. And we did came on one of our one of the activities that we're doing on the Reconnect is something called a bio blitz, where we just learn to really lean back and just observe what's going on in nature there and then. So different ways of just leaning in and observing what's happening, what species are there, the abundance, what they're in, just absolutely just noting that. We spent some time really, and it's such an enjoyable, fun thing to do. And then afterwards, just sort of sitting with and reflecting on that strength of observation as you developed it and that skill, and then just like look at using that to then look back at something that was perhaps really bothering the business, this what happens in 5 years, 10 years. And it was just amazing to see that brand new fresh perspective that came with that, which was just like, well, it's not even my decision to make. Like, actually it's about who's there at the time. It's going to be more about the ecosystem and how they do it. It's all these like lovely natural metaphors came in, like actually it's their future, not mine. And realizing more the natural order of things just brought this really lovely, not just like an aha moment, but an aha moment with an entire structure around it, because you just lent in and observed these sort of natural fractals, sort of patterns of how they happen. And then that business has been able to build out on that, to build out, bringing in the team and thinking about the future, and all of it has just evolved really naturally rather than being something that's forced. That's a sort of, I think we say, if you want to think bigger, work wilder, because it's just that idea of, what Reconnect do, which is just letting the mind slip back into a natural state and having lots of different ways of creating the opportunity to do that. And then we also lean into nature as doing that. So I just can see this like double whammy impact of what Reconnect does and what Wilder Work does, which is so exciting. So I think the brilliant impacts that we were already having, like, I think they're just going to be multiplied.
I don't know if you've got anything to add to that.
Yeah, and I was thinking it's just going to be really inspiring to have all like those visuals, well, not just visuals, like all the senses around as metaphors for what each person is experiencing.
100%. And do you know what? This probably draws very nicely, and I'm aware of time for everybody as well, it being their lunchtime, to draw to the collaboration event that we've got going on in September. So it's the 6th to the 9th of September. It's a Reconnect and Wilder Work weekend at Hatch Park in Kent at the Wilder Work Estate. And I mean, it's going to be an incredible event. It's a collaboration between the concepts that we do at Reconnect and the concepts that Holly does at Wilder Work, and bring them together so that you as individuals can have a truly immersive experience in being able to reconnect to yourself, reconnect to nature, stay in that space over a couple of nights in really nice glamping pods with beautiful food, beautiful experiences. And we'd love for you guys to be able to get involved. I don't know if Holly is to let us know a little bit about the park, the experience. I mean, what's going to happen? What can someone experience coming on the Wilder Work and Reconnect weekend?
So it's like so we want to create a journey through, and that's what we do. So I think often you can come away on this and you're just in one place, whereas if it's that there's so much psychological backing around the fact that in movement, in journeying from one place to another, we unlock things through our movement, through the conversations we have, and through the sense of travelling through different landscapes. So you'll arrive at one place, whether that's a farm or the gamekeeper's lodge, and we have beautiful food and refreshments, and it's all from that place. So, and it's all from that season. So you'll try flavour from the minute you start. You will have flavours you've never had. And we have like dandelion syrup cake to kick off. It's all vegan. It's all really delicious. The chef who cooks it is there passionately explaining about it. The forager who often works really hand in glove with the chef to make sure it's the most hyper-local seasonal ingredients, is there to talk about it as well. And then we design an adventure through that landscape. It's not too hard. It's all fitness levels can do it, but it's like a half an hour to an hour walk. But we would often do it over a longer amount of time to make sure we build in lots of time to stop and pause and talk and observe the landscape. And Hatch Park is just this phenomenal landscape. It has been in the same family since the 1600s, passed through the generations. It's just the landscape is a tapestry of British history, from the ancient woodlands that have been pollarded for the past thousands of years, that are sort of site of specialist scientific interest. And it's all within a protected landscape. You've got beautiful deer roaming, you've got areas that are intensely farmed still, so you can see the impact of that on the landscape, and you've got areas that have been left to rewild. So you can see that dichotomy and juxtaposition of what happens when we do things that are intense to get a yield, and what happens when we let things just go, and where is the beauty inherent in that, and where is the richness in that. So we have like a base camp, which is a beautiful teepee. We've got lovely glamping tents, big open fires, all weathers. No matter what happens, we've got different venues and ways that we can adapt to do that. And our three main ingredients that we say are wilder people. So you'll meet people like Emma and I who are coaches, but also you'll have regenerative farmers, ecologists, arborists, people who work day in, day out on the land, who you probably wouldn't get to meet, who are able to offer a fresh perspective, because they're often running their own businesses. Farming is a business in and of itself, and often we find that the magic is there, really connecting to people from a different walk of life to yourself, who can offer a really fresh perspective. And then finally, wild food. The food is just such a big part of it. The drink, the food, all the producers, everything is super local, low carbon, low footprint, and we're really mindful of everything that we do and the impact that we leave on the landscape. And our model is that we reinvest the money that comes into that estate back into rewilding. So the more people that come onto Hatch Park, the more that they are then creating a model that can be moved across to other places of valuing the revenue that can be brought in from a rewilded landscape more than intensively farming. So you can actually start to restore nature more across the site as we restore a more natural way in people as well.
I love that. And then, I mean, Emma, from how are people then able to reconnect during this journey as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and potentially some musicians, no, that might be included in the mix as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's some music, so your music always has to be there. Yeah, so the reconnecting. What I want to emphasize about the reconnecting is, apart from everything Holly's already said, we'll be doing it in different places. So you'll be getting the benefit of actually the insights being helped by the movement and by the change, and we're not sitting statically in one place. And this is a real gift, because the internal is reflected in the external, and it's the same thing. And there's going to be, as we said before, those metaphors around. And yeah, what I want to emphasize is that it is a shift. So it's not about, there's two things I wanted to say. The first thing I wanted to say was pointing to what Holly was mentioning, that yeah, meeting different people from different walks of life, or professionals from different professions in that sense, is so valuable. And being out in the real world, it's very easy to be sitting behind your computer and having a coaching session on Zoom or whatever, but actually being out in the real world and doing real things I think is so, seeing it in that circumstance or that environment is just powerful in itself. I always encourage, when after Reconnect weekends, it's not about going away and just reading books about the understanding that we're teaching, but also being out in the real world and doing things. So that's an important part. Reconnect itself is not about, oh, I've just had a nice weekend, I've been out in nature, now I'm feeling relaxed. It's a shift. It's really reconnecting you back to how you work as a human being, how nature works, the whole of nature works. And that's why it's so powerful doing it with World of Work, so that you then are pointed back to yourself. You're that tree. You don't need to constantly depend on other things and other people, but you can look to your own wisdom, knowing that you're interconnected like trees are, but really seeing clearly, feeling the difference. All that extra thinking and those to-dos and that control, feeling that falling away. It will come back at times, but when it comes back, you're going to be wise to what's happening. It's not a weekend where you go away and do a bit of yoga, you do a bit of this, and then you come back and you're back, or go on holiday and you're back to the same thing again. It is a shift, and it's going to be magnified by the fact that we're doing that out in nature. So if you can come on this one, like, yeah, it's going to be amazing.
I mean, I don't know if anyone has any of you guys have anything else to add onto that. I think that from my perspective, it's not just, I mean, it's a weekend for yourself. And if you would like to do this with a family member or a team member, like there's spots that we can do. If you have any questions about the logistics of the weekend, like get in touch with myself, Emma, or Holly, to have a conversation about it. I'll probably say again, it's the 6th to 9th of September. Your accommodation, food, everything's all included. But I think it's just that immersive experience with other like-minded individuals like yourself that love the outdoors, enjoy that space, are really looking to not just reconnect to yourselves, but explore that further potentially, and have that awareness is like, what impact do my thoughts have on the performance that I have in my business, potentially my team's performance, how I can make a difference to the business. But alongside that is, how can we make a difference to the environment that we're in around us, versus just going through the motions? How can we be a lot more present in the space that we're in? And I mean, as a side note, it can go on the business as it is a business. It is for businesses, so it can be a bit as a business expense, which always is a bonus. But just get in touch if you would like any more information from any of us. And I don't know if you guys would like anything to finish off with. I just thank you for taking the time to chat to me and chat to everybody today about the collaboration that we've got going on.
Thank you so much, Bella, for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to add one more thing, actually, which is that you never know, when you asked before about what happens to people when they come on a Reconnect or they go through this experience. Yeah. And pointing to something that Holly said as well, you never really know. Like, I remembered an example of someone who came on and had been really trying to look after his health for 20 years and had tried all sorts of different things, but hadn't really kind of got into the swing of things. And then came on a Reconnect, and after that, like in a few months' time, had lost, I think, like 20 kilos, something like that. I don't know. He lost a lot of weight.
Yeah. But what comes up at the Reconnects is just always so different, and it's the same with the World of Work. Like, people go in thinking, this is what it is, I'm going to really do this, and it's often something much deeper. that's unlocked, that's like much more structural. So the impact is much bigger.
Yeah, and I can say I know from my experiences that I went and I thought I was just running 100 million miles an hour, but what I really discovered was something that I'd never realized that was happening until, and it's been years and years that I've been just moving into locations, changing different things, and I never realized why I was doing that or what that was causing or what I was still continuing to do because of that perspective. And now the continued work that I've been doing, both through working with Reconnect and having Reconnect support me and speaking with Emma about it, is that it goes into so many different areas of our lives without us realizing the impact of what those deep beliefs or thoughts that we potentially thought that we had but aren't really the reality of us. And it's really nice to discover that, make that shift, and just become a much, I would say slower in ourselves, but also I call that probably more being more present to the situation that we're in versus having to feel like we're constantly having the wheels in motion, which means that we can't focus on anything else around us. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. And thank you for joining us, and thank you everybody else for joining us too.
Take care, guys. Hope to see some of you soon. Bye.
Bye.